Welcome in to the 2024 Locked On NFL Mock Draft Special.
Yeah, you can have Penix, Patricia.
Who says I want him?
I had to put a chip down of one player in this draft to go to the Hall of Fame. Who's my pick? And it's Marvin Harrison Jr.
The Locked On Podcast Network presents the 2024 NFL Mock Draft Special. Sponsored by LinkedIn.
Welcome to the 2024 Locked On NFL Mock Draft Special, episode 4 of 6. We're halfway through round 1. You can go back and see all the picks from the first 3 episodes of this mock draft special that will be taking you through all the way of round 1 and beyond of the NFL draft with unparalleled insight from the local experts of all 32 teams here at the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And don't worry, if your favorite team doesn't select in the first round, we got you covered. Every team's top selection, whenever that may be, even teams that might trade out of round 1 here late in the first round. An inside look from all 32 of our NFL local hosts and shows. All of our college shows as well will be checking in at various points. We'll also get team building insight from Joe Marino, Kyle Krabs, the Draft Dudes, fantasy insight from our Locked On fantasy experts for some of the biggest selections in this year's draft. And of course, we are your host. I am Brian Peacock, NFL analyst, co-host of the Peacock and Williamson NFL show and Locked On 49ers. Here with me, my co-host, former NFL scout Matt Williamson. And this year, we added another face, another voice to it. We already had Keith jumping in last year from Locked On NFL Draft. Now we got his partner, Damian Parson, outstanding duo from the Locked On NFL Draft podcast, breaking down all these prospects. This Locked On NFL Mock Draft Special is sponsored by LinkedIn. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the right people for your team faster and for free. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL. Terms and conditions apply. Here we go, guys. Jacksonville Jaguars on the clock. Tony Wiggins of Locked On Jaguars standing by with the 17th selection. And look, covering the 49ers, I know Trent Baalke's tendencies. I'm going to toot my own horn here. I was the first analyst to throw Trayvon Walker, number 1 overall, a couple years ago, because Trent Baalke loves him some arm length. We got some 36 inchers out there with arm length, guys. Trent Baalke may go there. What do you think the needs are for this Jacksonville Jaguars team? Keith, let's start with you. Jags 17. Where are we at on the board? Is there a glaring best player available for Jacksonville here?
Do you want to go wide receiver here? I think that's the question, right? Because this has to be the Trevor Lawrence take the next step into being a consistent Pro Bowler, right? Like for the generational phrase that was thrown around for Trevor Lawrence, so it's him, Andrew Luck, and probably Peyton Manning, right? It just hasn't been there, and there's been a lot of inconsistency, and I think we placed a lot of that blame on Urban Meyer, right? And then they got the new head coach. He came in, made the playoffs, and then it seems like a regression now. So I go wide receiver, maybe offensive tackle, but I definitely go in the direction of giving Trevor Lawrence even more of a supporting cast to be able to take that next step forward to be a consistent Pro Bowl quarterback.
Yeah, I think if Quinyon Mitchell was here, that would probably be a pick, because they have to upgrade and find like a legitimate start, like number 1 style corner. But I agree with Keith. It's probably going to be on the offensive side of the ball. It probably should be on the offensive side of the ball, either in the trenches to protect him. I know that's been an issue for them over through the first couple years with Trevor Lawrence there, but getting him that true number 1 like weapon and receiver, that's kind of been the big thing that they had, the big hole they haven't been able to enclose and fill.
Matt, where you at with Trevor Lawrence and this Jaguars team? Does he need those pieces around him? They've done some work at wide receiver in the offseason. They've done some work on the offensive line. Does he need a better nest to thrive? Is he in that echelon of quarterbacks where, he can elevate the rest of the offense? Let's figure out the defensive side of the ball and make sure that is, primed and ready to go for building a championship level defense.
I'm a huge Trevor Lawrence believer still. And as he turned into the transcendent player that everyone thought he'd be coming out of Clemson, that wasn't fair to him to begin with. It's not fair to Caleb Williams this year. Can he overcome his circumstances? I don't think, but few can. And to be frank, I don't think this is a very good organization. They don't team build the way I would team build. I think they make it more difficult on their quarterback than most teams in the league do. They've downgraded at wide receiver. The offensive line is problematic as it stands right now. They don't have much of a running game. They rely too much on their quarterback. I would consider DeJean or Wiggins, but I agree with these guys. It should be an offensive pick. I would probably grab Lathan or Fawaga, even if it's at guard. I don't care. Just give me the best lineman available with what's out there right now.
Yeah, still some really good offensive linemen sliding on the board. We've seen Latham, Fawaga, those names going, closer to the top 10, and we're getting closer to pick 20 here in this mock draft. But pick 17 is in. Let's go to Tony Wiggins of Locked On Jaguars.
With the 17th pick in the Locked On NFL mock draft, the Jacksonville Jaguars select A.D. Mitchell, wide receiver from Texas. This is a good player, man. I actually tried to move down. The Jags are in need of a corner. I know that they have options at corner in the second round, and there's a lot of talk about which position would go first. The way the board fell in this draft, it was pretty much a no-brainer. It was either a corner that I don't think warrants being drafted this high in Ennis Rakestraw, or go ahead and take the talent. So what I did was I went with the traits. I went with the fact that the Jaguars need more size. They need a pure number one. He sort of has a Justin Jefferson body a little bit, maybe a little bit bigger than that. I'm not saying he's Justin Jefferson, but what I am saying, he's somebody that can run routes cleanly. He can play the X position. He gives the Jaguars a deep threat, also gives them a red zone threat outside of Gabe Davis and outside of Evan Ingram. So now the Jaguars have a young receiver instead of trading for a veteran receiver that they would have had to pay a whole bunch of money. And they lost Calvin Ridley. They struck out a little bit when it came to Brandon Ayuk. They get a guy on a rookie contract with a fifth-year option in A.D. Mitchell out of Texas. And I think the Jaguars will be very, very happy with that selection.
A few things here with the Jaguars pick at number 17, Adonai Mitchell out of the University of Texas, a wide receiver. Love the hat, by the way. Wig, Duval to be die. Shout out Duval County with the selection for the Jacksonville Jaguars here. Adonai Mitchell, though, A.D. Mitchell scares me a little bit. Damian, talk to me about this prospect. Really feels boom or bust. I mean, he's got so much ability. Love the ball skills, but there's some things on tape that I just feel like I can't trust what I'm seeing, like the half-speed routes. What kind of player is this, and what kind of player does he project to in the NFL?
He's a talented player that projects that you need to put him in the wide receiver one role, right? To get the things that you just mentioned, the kind of lackadaisical route running on the backside of the play where he's not the number one read. Well, if he goes to Jacksonville, he's probably going to be the number one read on 80% of the routes, because he will be their true number one potential type of receiver. And I know they brought in Gabe Davis. They have Christian Kirk. They're hoping Brenton Strange in year 2 takes a leap while having Evan Ingram at tight end. So they have some athletic pieces there. But I think Adonai, with his skill set, route running, his tempo, hands, ball skills, and the testing speed he showed at the combine. One thing about Trevor Lawrence, I live in the Carolinas. I watched him his whole entire career at Clemson. He thrived with bigger body receivers, those 6'3", 6'4" guys that could play at the catch point. He loved those guys. Justin Ross, pre-injury, T. Higgins, is multiple guys that he was able to thrive with. I think Adonai Mitchell would give him another number one caliber weapon. And like I said, you just feed him, I think you get the best out of him. But if it's a situation where you throw him in the rotation where he's wide receiver 2, some of the issues you mentioned, BP, they're going to start to show up on tape. I think this is probably the perfect situation for him.
But that kind of worries me, though, right? Is that in order to have you on the field, I have to throw the football to you for you to be productive for your teammates, right? Like that kind of concerns me, especially when we're talking about establishing consistent culture, right? I just talked about that with Trevor Lawrence, and then you go get a wide receiver who's inconsistent, right? I don't know how that helps Trevor Lawrence as far as the consistency perspective. Now, the upside obviously is there, right? Brian, I think you the statement was correct. It's boom or bust, right? And the boom could be top 3 wide receiver in this entire class because he has all the physical traits you want in a wide receiver. The pick, if I had to give my analysis in one word, is just interesting. That's what I would go with.
It'll be very interesting. Matt, the other thing I took away from Wig is his board. And that's one thing we forget. We get in this group think and we think, okay, this is the order of all the players that all the teams are going to like, and they're going to all like all 4 quarterbacks the same, and they're going to be willing to trade up for this, or this is the order of the corners. And he's talking about Ennis Rakestraw over Kool-Aid, over Cooper Kupp with the cornerbacks he was looking at. I found that kind of fascinating.
Yeah, I don't agree. I mean, I think Rakestraw is a early day 2 type of guy, but hey, we all have our opinions, and I acknowledge corner as a need as he did as well. So I think that's something that could be in the cards for them in day 2 in this instant. I love Damian's point about Lawrence throwing to big receivers, trusting those guys, putting the ball where they can go up and get it. And Mitchell certainly has those traits. I mean, traits is the word I keep coming back to with Mitchell. I don't know that he'd be one of my 17 best prospects in this draft, though.
Landon McCool, host of Locked On Cowboys, explains why this is the right time for this pick in the Locked On NFL War Room.
Yeah, I mean, this is probably right at the beginning of where I would feel comfy picking him. But, Brian Thomas is already gone at this point. It looks like there's like a little mini run going at the wide receiver spot. I mean, I think these guys are all first-round wide receivers. It's just a little bit earlier than I would have taken him. Or I guess this is right at the beginning of where I probably would have taken him. I think he's got good juice. He's smooth as a route runner. And I think he's got some physicality to him for not being like, huge wide receiver. So I like J.D. Mitchell a lot.
Really good body control too. I think at this point it's just like pick your preference for receiver. Once those top 3 are gone, it's like, do you want the speedster? Do you want more of a finesse route runner? Do you want a Keon Coleman, like go up and get it player? I think it's preference.
For more on Odunze Mitchell, here is Locked On Longhorns host Jonathan Davis with what he'll bring to an NFL team.
If the question is, what is an NFL team getting if they select Odunze Mitchell? My answer is a dog in every sense of the word. Listed at 6'2", and 208 pounds, he has the size, strength, and frame to make any contested catch a no contest. And somehow, when you throw up a 50-50 ball to Odunze Mitchell, the numbers become 80-20 in his favor. But you can't just put your hands on him. He'll run right past you, as we saw in Indianapolis at the Combine with that 4.34 40-yard dash. But what's more important to me than the measurables is the moments. And when the lights shine the brightest in college football, Odunze Mitchell took his game to another level. Can I interest you in 5 receiving touchdowns in just 5 career college football playoff games? One of those being the go-ahead touchdown in the 4th quarter for Georgia's first championship since 1980. Another one being a go-ahead touchdown in the last minute of a 42-41 victory over the Ohio State Buckeyes to get back to the national championship game his sophomore year. Or how about the last receiving touchdown of his career? A goal line fade for the Texas Longhorns to bring the Longhorns within 6 against the Washington Huskies and give them a chance to win the Sugar Bowl at the end. What is an NFL team getting if they select Odunze Mitchell? A dog in every sense of the word, a true number 1 NFL wide receiver, and a player that elevates his game when the lights shine the brightest.
It was a good point by Jonathan there about Odunze Mitchell, too. He was playing for Georgia as a freshman. I mean, this is a big-time player with big-time ability playing early in college. And so can the Jacksonville Jaguars squeeze every bit of talent out of A.D. Mitchell is the big question there. And now we're on to pick number 18, and it is the Cincinnati Bengals in a little bit of a retool here. When you start getting expensive quarterbacks and expensive wide receivers and expensive pieces on the football team, you've got to get young, controllable, cheaper, high-end talent, and it's an important pick at number 18 for those Bengals for that reason. Matt, what are you looking at for the Bengals when you put your GM hat on? What is the direction this team should go with this pick?
I wonder if they were considered Mitchell or Murphy, or Thomas, I'm sorry, from LSU.
Brian Thomas, yeah.
As a T. Higgins replacement, either a year from now or make a trade for Higgins, overnight, something along those lines. It became really chalky before they signed Jones to play right tackle that this would be a right tackle. And with Fuaga and Latham there, I think that would have been very much in the mix. I mean, it's only a 1-year contract, though. You could bump one of those guys into guard and then, move them out the right tackle next year. But DJ Reader's gone, and that to me is the biggest hole on the team as it sits right now. You got your choice of defensive tackles. Murphy and Newton are probably more Geno Atkins-like than they are, DJ Reader, but that's probably the direction you go here.
D-line, I mean, you got to be good up front, right, Keith? You can't go wrong. Offensive line, defensive line seems like a good place to go for this Bengals team.
Agree 100%. You can't go wrong with protecting Joe Burrow, right? But then we also know the balance. You're going to have to stop a Patrick Mahomes, a Josh Allen, potentially the Miami Dolphins in their electric offense. So going defense, I agree. Trying to stop the run, replacing, finding a way to replace DJ Reader. I would go Jerzon Newton right here. To me, he's my defensive tackle one in this draft class, and I think he can be an immediate impact guy next to players like Trey Hendrickson.
Let's find out. James Rapien, the host of Locked On Bengals, is ready to go. We're at pick number 18 in the Locked On Podcast Network NFL Mock Draft Special.
With the 18th pick in the 2024 Locked On NFL Mock Draft, the Cincinnati Bengals select Johnny Newton, defensive tackle, Illinois. And this was a tough decision for my co-host Jake Lisco and myself of Locked On Bengals for one reason. Offensive line was there. Talisi Fuaga was there. There were multiple other options offensive tackle-wise, but Johnny Newton should be able to come in and be a plug-and-play interior pass rusher and give this defense some much-needed pop. And you just look at his production at Illinois, what he brings. The Bengals haven't had someone like him since they had Geno Atkins, and no one is going to crown Johnny Newton Geno Atkins, but he can have an impact right away. He's certainly someone that is rare, has a unique skill set, and he's really, really hard to find. And we also think that the Bengals could address the offensive line on day 2 of the draft with 3 of their selections, including the 49th overall pick. So Johnny Newton, it was a tough pick. It was a tough selection, but it was one that we made in hopes of giving the Bengals interior pass rush a huge boost right away this season in 2024.
And it is Newton, the defensive tackle from Illinois. The tape I loved when I put it on, and I was surprised that he hasn't been getting more hype throughout this process. Maybe it's because he was injured, wasn't able to work out at the combine. But Matt, you nailed it with the Geno Atkins comp, and James talked about it there. Getting good inside on the defensive line is just something they've got to take care of in this draft if they can.
Yeah, and they use the resources on their defensive line. They drafted an end last year. I mean, they put money in there, and that's something that they stress in that defense. Makes all the sense in the world. They need Burrow to stay healthy, obviously, to get back to where they need to be. But the defense was remarkably poor last year. I mean, just because they switched out some safeties, I was shocked how bad they were on defense. But they addressed the safety situation, which I thought was smart.
A little juice inside of the pass rusher, Damian. What's the scouting report on Johnny Newton?
Oh, man. Heavy-handed, strong. He can hold him at the point of attack. He's agile, quick, and athletic. This is a guy that just knows how to get the job done, right? Knows how to get into the backfield and create that interior havoc for quarterbacks, right? Quarterbacks hate nothing more than pressure in their face, and he can do that every single snap. And when you think about that division, having to deal with Lamar Jackson, having to deal with hopefully a better version of Deshaun Watson, having to deal with, of course, Patrick Mahomes and Josh Allen, what better way to deal with these guys than playing with 4-man fronts and being able to drop everybody else off in coverage? And we've seen the impact of the Aaron Donalds of the world. When you can get to the quarterback quickly from the interior, it changes a lot of things. And I'm not saying Johnny Newton is Aaron Donald, but he brings that type of pass rush ability to where I want him going downhill, attacking the gaps, and really creating that issue for the quarterback to not be able to step up in the pocket. But also, you want him trying to flush him out to the outsides to your edge rushers, that they have on this roster.
Ross Jackson from Locked On Saints is in the Locked On NFL War Room, giving some love to this pick by the Bengals.
I love it. Johnny Newton's probably, I know there's Byron Murphy as well, but Johnny Newton's my DT1 in this class. Just one of those guys that can do a little bit of everything, can be super disruptive. It's always nice to have that pass rusher in the middle. You want to get pressure up the middle in the NFL. Newton's a guy that can give it to you. I love that for them, especially after losing their top guy and everything in the interior and then being able to replace him immediately after. It doesn't get any better than that. I like that pick.
The Los Angeles Rams finally have a first-round selection. How will they use it? Will they use it? Will they trade away before they get a chance to use it next? Los Angeles is on the clock in the Locked On NFL Mock Draft Special. The Locked On NFL Mock Draft Special is brought to you by LinkedIn Jobs. When you're hiring for a small business, you want to find quality professionals that are right for the role. That's why you have to check out LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs has the tools to help you find the right professionals for your team faster and for free. LinkedIn isn't just a job board. LinkedIn helps you hire professionals you can't find anywhere else, even those who aren't actively searching for a new job, but might be open to the perfect role. In a given month, over 70% of LinkedIn users don't visit other leading job sites. So if you're not looking on LinkedIn, you're looking in the wrong place. On LinkedIn, 86% of small businesses get a qualified candidate within 24 hours. Hire professionals like a professional on LinkedIn. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedonnfl. That's linkedin.com/lockedonnfl to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. To be honest with you, I think it would be fantastic with less need on the clock trades this pick away so the Rams still don't have a first-round pick. Just have a little fun. Go find a veteran player. I mean, Byron Murphy's still on the board, guys. You don't go replacing someone like Aaron Donald who has retired. And I almost think that you have to stay away from a first-round pick of a defensive tackle just to not put that on the young man. It's almost like forces me to take it away, even though that'd be a nice fit. And I think it's the best fit for, another undersized but very skilled, very talented defensive tackle here. If they were to go Byron Murphy, Keith, is there any other selections you see that you might like here for the Los Angeles Rams? Offense, defense, where do you go with your first round pick since 2016?
Yeah, no, I agree. And for that reason, I may not take a defensive tackle, right? I wouldn't want to put that type of pressure on this young man. And the thing is that Byron Murphy, he's going to draw those comps anyway, just from a physique perspective, how he plays. He's going to draw some heavy Aaron Donald comparisons. I look at the edge rusher position. I think if we've asked ourselves potentially 3-4 months ago, right, would Laiatu Latu or Jared Verse still be on the board at the middle of the first round, we would all say no, right? Like all of those guys go potentially top 10. So the Los Angeles Rams can use some edge rusher help. So I would go either Laiatu Latu or Jared Verse here to help boost that pass rush. We know they're going to be playing the 49ers, right? You have to get after the Seattle Seahawks also. So I would seriously consider an edge rusher.
Matt, year to year, there's the different number of quote unquote first round players, guys that would be a first round pick in most drafts. And we're starting to get to the point here at, pick 18, 19, 20, where teams might have very few of those players left. And so maybe it's just a matter of, okay, which first round guy is left for us if we're picking at this point in the draft that is the player that is above the next tier of guys, and it doesn't matter what position he plays in. Do you see any names like that pop up to you at this point in the draft, Matt?
I think that's certainly going to factor in these next handful of picks or so. I got a noticeably better grade on this guy, even though it's not our top need. I keep coming back to the tackles. I mean, Latham and Fuaga to me are rare players that most years would have got scooped up long ago.
Yep.
As for the Rams, I think this pick will be definitely on defense. I mean, is it one of those defensive linemen we mentioned? Is it Wiggins? Is it DeJean? But I mean, this time, or when the season opened, it was Aaron Donald and 10 guys I'd never heard of, and they did better than that. But I still think the defense needs a lot of work.
Now we've at least heard a few of those guys. It's not quite the no-name defense it was last year for the Los Angeles Rams, though they lost their biggest name. So do they go fortify that defensive line? Let's find out. Doug McCain, co-host of Locked On Rams, ready to go with the 19th pick in the Locked On NFL Mock Draft Special.
With the 19th pick in the Locked On NFL Mock Draft, the Los Angeles Rams select Laiatu Latu, edge rusher out of UCLA. Now, even before Aaron Donald's shocking retirement, by the way, AD, if you're watching this, please come back. Please reconsider. Please come back, AD. I don't even care when, before the season, during the season, after the bye. Just please come back, AD. Now, even before that, the Rams were in need of adding an edge rusher, and they didn't do it through free agency, but they could address that need in the draft with Laiatu Latu. He's the most skilled edge rusher coming out of this draft. He's the relentless motor. He's a great athlete to add to that monster 6'5", 265-pound frame. And you just don't see polished pass rushers with those kind of advanced hand movements and this level of technique at this age. He had a strong combine. He's just really outstanding. Watching some of his highlights right now, and I think he's going to be an impact starter from day one. Just look at his production in Westwood. I mean, he was treating college O-linemen like they were toddlers. It looked like he was playing up against Pop Warner kids. In 2 years in Westwood, he registered 23.5 sacks. He had a 23.1% pass rush win rate. That was tops in all of college football. The Rams need a star on defense. Latu could be that guy. Bring the Bruin to the Rams. Us Bruins got to stick together. I love this pick for the Rams. Laiatu Latu to LA.
It was nice of the Rams to let Doug borrow the stadium there for a little while.
And I'm not going to call this a homer pick with the LA team drafting the UCLA guy, because I love Latu's tape, man. His hand usage is so good. There's some medical that teams have to figure out, but man, just a hair under 6'5", 259 pounds at the combine. It ran 4.64, 32 and 3/4 arm length, maybe just a little sub of what you would like there. But the arm length didn't matter on tape because his hand usage was so good, and he's one of the most ready to play guys, I think, in this draft. Damian, Keith, did you guys see the same thing when you put on that UCLA tape?
Yes, sir. I mean, a lot of words that could describe Latu, but he's crafty, polished. Like a lot of times when I'm watching a lot of these edge rushers, I'm looking to see, do you have a plan on how you're going to defeat your opponent? And he always has a plan, whether it's an outside move, inside counter. He has an outstanding motor, but he also has probably one of the top 2 bends, being able to bend around the edge and corner to the quarterback. I think this is a guy that can walk into the NFL, stay healthy. He could be an 8 to 12 sack guy at minimum on a regular basis in the NFL. He just knows how to get back there.
Yeah, you look at this Los Angeles Rams depth chart on the defensive side of the football, right? And the 2 parts that need a lot of help is the pass rush situation or it's the defensive backs, right? And I think Latu, like I said, right, we didn't expect him to be here, but he's here. You pair him with Byron Young, who's another one of my guys that I liked a lot last year, the edge rusher out of Tennessee. I think you have a pretty good 1-2 punch. And now if that defensive back or the secondary group is not great, you know what they say, right? Use the pass rush to help out the secondary. And I think that can be the case here. Those young 2 guys could fuel this entire defense just getting after the quarterback.
Can't wait to see what Matt says about this upcoming Steelers pick here at number 20. But first, I want to go to Tony Wiggins from the Locked On Jags. And he's in the Locked On NFL War Room with a unique analysis of this pick.
I like him a little more twitchy, but he's all transfer. He transfers speed to power so good. And that's what he does better than anybody.
It's crazy how much the Rams have like flipped. And I guess it's just like, that's the cycle of life when you're a contender that goes all in trading all these top draft picks. But now it's like they're a team with a, top heavy quarterback contract with Matt Stafford and just a bunch of young talent, I feel like, on both sides of the ball. So very different than what you're used to with LA the last decade, pretty much.
Are we about to see a run on defensive linemen after back-to-back D-line selections? The draft dudes Kyle Krabs and Joe Marino of Locked On NFL Scouting give their thoughts.
Joe, our latest 3 picks, Jacksonville taking wide receiver A.D. Mitchell from Texas, Cincinnati snagging Johnny Newton from Illinois, and the L.A. Rams drafting pass rusher Laiatu Latu. Good value here, particularly on the defensive line for both the Bengals and the Rams, stands out to me as we get a little bit of traction now going with defensive linemen coming off the board. It's kind of been a slog, a lot of offensive linemen. You saw Dallas Turner go earlier, but now you're not going to be surprised to see Byron Murphy II come off the board. Now that Johnny Newton's come off the board and Jared Verse come off the board, now that Latu's off the board, it feels like this could be the start of a run for some of these talented defensive line groups.
Yeah, I'm excited about both of those landing spots for those defensive linemen. Johnny Newton going to Cincinnati, where they've had a need for some interior pass rush now for a few years. Zachary Carter not really materializing. Well, and Sheldon, so they got Sheldon Rankins, which is a good signing, but I don't think you can have enough of that, especially in that division. They like to run the ball. That quick pressure on the quarterback matters a ton. And then Latu as an edge rusher for the Los Angeles Rams, where, Aaron Donald, obviously an interior player, but needing more impact from that defensive line. Now they can pair him with Kobe Turner to really build this defensive line moving forward. The questionable pick for me is A.D. Mitchell to the Jacksonville Jaguars. I know that they missed out on bringing back Calvin Ridley, but they still have Christian Kirk. They still have Zay Jones. They gave Gabe Davis big money. This feels like Trent Baalke doing a very Trent Baalke thing and going with height, weight, speed and really valuing that. And I'm not sure that this was their best utilization of this resource to really round out their roster. I'm not sure it was the biggest need, and I definitely don't think it was the best player on the board.
Yeah, I would be inclined to agree. It's felt like Jacksonville's been committed to getting that pass catching room very robust for Trevor Lawrence and Doug Peterson, though. So I'm not necessarily surprised that is the direction that this pick went, just because it felt like there was so much smoke for them to really have a skill group that was full as they look to make the jump and kind of get things kickstarted with this regime.
All right, Matt, take it away. The Pittsburgh Steelers coming up next with the 20th selection in this mock draft. And Matt, you know the Steelers better than anybody. You cover them in the Pittsburgh area. What is Chris Carter, the host of Locked On Steelers, goal with this selection? You got to like how the board has fallen if the offensive line is that pick.
Oh, I'm doing cartwheels about it, to be honest with you. I mean, so they're going to draft a corner at some point. And I could see Cooper DeJean in a Steeler uniform very easily. I could picture that. After the Deontay Johnson trade, the wide receiver room's a bit of a mess, but I don't see one worth taking at this point. And they draft day 2 wide receivers like no other team in the league, to be honest with you. Pittsburgh Steeler Nation's losing their mind because they don't have a Hall of Fame center at the moment, but there isn't one on the board. That's not the pick. Coach Tomlin says this all the time. You know, when you have red paint, you paint the barn red. And offensive tackles are the red paint in this draft. And after drafting Broderick Jones last year, this is such a rich tackle draft. I think you set yourself up at 20 to grab one of them. And the show I do daily on Steelers.com, I've probably said 8,000 times that if Latham or Fuaga is there at 20, you sprint to the podium. And they're both there, which is bonkers.
We'll break the tie. Keith, Damien, what does Locked On NFL Draft board look like? Is it Latham? Is it Fuaga here? Is it somebody else for the Steelers at 20?
No, I agree 100% with Matt. This fell exactly how you wanted to fall, right? You move Broderick Jones to the left tackle, and then now right tackle, you go get Latham or you go get Talise Fuaga. You don't overthink this at all. You probably take 30, 45 seconds just to write the name down, and then you run up there and you hand the card in. I think it's a home run pick also because they're trying to establish that identity of physicality back, right? And then we know that you're going to need some tackles for Najee Harris that set really hard edges to, get him going if you're trying to talk about outside zone type things. So I think either one of these guys would be a great pick for the Pittsburgh Steelers.
I think I agree with both Matt and Keith. And when you think about adding Arthur Smith to this offense, he ran a lot of pistol when he was in Atlanta, right? You see a lot of pistol offset stuff, some diamond kind of triangle sets where you got 3 backs back there, 2 flanking the quarterback, 1 in the backfield. And he gives you a lot of versatile looks. Some of them might be a tight end back there where they motion the guy out. It gets a lot of versatility, but adding, and Keith has consistently said this during this stream, and during these episodes, create the culture. And the Pittsburgh Steelers have always had a culture of physicality. Either J.C. Latham or Talise Fuaga, they will help reestablish that physicality. Me and Keith have talked about it, and I've quoted it multiple times. I think it's Dan Moore, the left tackle. Analytically, he was charged for 55 pressures by himself in 2023. That cannot happen going forward, no matter who's back there. It no matter if it's Russell Wilson or Justin Fields. Let's get Broderick Jones on the left, get Talise or J.C. Latham at the right, and let's prosper.
All right, Chris. Christopher Carter, you know what to do. Standing by.
Don't screw it up, CC.
Locked On Steelers making the pick at number 20 in the Locked On NFL Mock Draft Special.
With the 20th pick in the Locked On NFL mock draft, the Pittsburgh Steelers select Talise Fuaga, offensive tackle from Oregon State. This pick would make a lot of sense for the Pittsburgh Steelers, who keep claiming on wanting to improve their offensive line and make them a dominant unit. Talise Fuaga would be an amazing pairing option with Broderick Jones, who last year severely boosted the Steelers' offensive line. Once he became a starter from week 10 on consistently through the rest of the season, the Steelers had the second best rushing attack in the NFL, only behind the Baltimore Ravens. Now, if they add another tackle who can be dominant as a run blocker, like Talise Fuaga projects to be, that could be the factor that allows their run game to consistently be one of the best in the NFL, which is a major factor for what this team wants to get back to being able to do to pair with its top 10 defense. That's where Talise Fuaga fits in with the Steelers in how he could be another big option in blocking. Now, he still has plenty to polish, like his footwork. He still needs to get better as a pass protector. But if you put him on the right tackle and allow Broderick Jones to go to left tackle, that could put both at natural positions that allow them to be bookends and be really great option for the Steelers offensive line, and pair them also with James Daniels and Isaac Seumalo, both who were pretty good and the two of the better options for the Steelers on the offensive line last year. If the Steelers get this pick, they're running to the podium and taking Fuaga.
And it is one of the tackles, Talise Fuaga, right tackle. And I love the plug-and-play nature. By the way, Fuaga might have been my favorite prospect I've watched leading up to the draft. He's so fun to watch. He crushes people in the run game. He can get out on the move and hit guys. A little bit shorter arms, but played right tackle. He gets to plug in right at right tackle. And I love how Christopher laid it out there with Broderick Jones, who was a little bit more raw coming out last year than Fuaga, I think, is this year. had a chance to get his feet wet in the NFL. Now you have the guy who's ready to go at left tackle. You plug in Fuaga at right tackle. You got your bookends there in Pittsburgh. And Matt, Chris did not screw this one up.
No, I've had a beverage or two with Chris over the years, usually at training camp, and he knows his stuff. He didn't screw it up. Great work. 2 great choices to pick from. Didn't get cute with it and trade down a few spots, hoping they're still there. It was a pretty obvious selection, and the black and gold in me hopes that this is how it goes in the real world.
He painted the house red, Matt.
Paint the house red.
Yeah, that with all that red paint. Keith, what do you like about Fuaga? Is there anything he needs to clean up at the NFL level?
I mean, just typical, you would say balance stuff, right? You can improve hand usage, right? But that's with every offensive lineman, right? That's why you have the offseason. You go to work on those type of things. You do the different type of offensive line clinics with the Duke Mayweathers and things like that. So other than that, I mean, I think this is a plug-and-play guy, and he's significantly better than what you have. So as soon as you draft him, you change your depth chart when you're in the building, and you say, hey, Talise Fuaga is our starting right tackle, and then you're ready to roll. And like I said, I just love it from the culture perspective, what I think he's going to bring to this offensive line as far as displacing guys off the line of scrimmage.
Can we talk about for a second the fact that at some point we're going to have Talise Fuaga and then Darnell Washington flanking him in run sets? Like, if you're Najee Harris and Jalen Warren, and whenever we see Justin Fields back there in that design QB run game that we know Arthur Smith knows how to dial up, just that right there is such an enticing thing to be able to flip Darnell Washington from either beside Fuaga or beside Broderick Jones. That's the side I'm running to. I'm letting you know right now, I'm absolutely targeting the outside hip of Darnell Washington, because that's essentially two offensive tackles on the edges.
Who needs receivers? Just let Fields go back there and run it every play.
I was just going to say, I can close my eyes and I can picture it. You talked about the pistol formation, Justin Fields. You got the big offensive tackles. You got a 270-pound tight end. And that could be a nightmare.
Who needs George Pickens? Huh? Who needs him?
Right.
Yeah,
he'll block a little bit. Another Georgia guy, yeah.
Whoever your quarterback is, both those guys can chuck the ball down the field. All right. Pittsburgh Steelers figuring things out. Gino Camilleri of Locked On Eagles talks about how the Pac-12 turns out offensive line beasts in the Locked On NFL War Room.
I'm glad the Pac-12 is getting their love. They truly do develop trench play really well. And you talk about Fuaga just being a stonewall in that conference. I mean, from day one, he was the anchor there. And from day one, I think he's going to come in and be similar to a guy like Penei Sewell at that right tackle position. I mean, just he is going to be able to play against that level of strength, against that level of speed. Fantastic pick for the Steelers.
We've heard from Kyle Krabs and Joe Marino for their draft analysis, but now Kyle Krabs is putting on a different hat. He's the host of Locked On Dolphins. Got to do some work making his own pick. Dolphins on the clock, and I'm hearing there's some interest in another in-state prospect. The Dolphins are on the clock next. I've been told I'm a competitive person, and yeah, I do have a competitive side. We all do, and my competitive side is a big fan of Monopoly Go. I'm sure you've heard of it. It's been downloaded over 150 million times. And it's a great twist on Monopoly, where you play on not one, but hundreds of Monopoly boards in crazy locations, building up amazing cities that bring you big money. But the best part is messing with your friends. And I can charge them rent on my iconic properties, just like classic Monopoly. But now I can also rob their vaults of riches for myself. And the leaderboards show me who the biggest Monopoly tycoon is. But it's not just my competitive side that loves it. You can team up with friends and people around the world in time tournaments to earn huge rewards. So get in the game and join your friends. Download Monopoly Go now, free on the App Store or Google Play. So we've got Kyle Krabs ready to go with the pick for the Miami Dolphins. We are on to 21 now in the Locked On NFL mock draft. Still some very good players with first-round grades on the board for the Dolphins. A lot of talk about the offensive line for them. J.C. Latham, we mentioned that with potentially the Steelers pick. He's still there. You see Jared Verse from Florida State. Byron Murphy, the tackle from Texas, is still out there. Keith, do you see a player that jumps out to you as someone you'd run to the podium for the Miami Dolphins?
Yes, definitely. First of all, the Miami Dolphins have to get better in the trenches, right? And there's one thing I know about Kyle Krabs, right? He likes his quarterback play and he likes his edge rusher. So if I had to predict, I'm picking Jared Verse here. And I think it's a seamless transition because Bradley Chubb was on this roster, right? And Bradley Chubb is pretty much my comp for Jared Verse, both heavy-handed guys that can bend the edge, convert speed to power really well. And I think this would be a really good selection. So if Bradley Chubb is still on the roster for the duration of next season, there are similar skill sets. He can kind of teach Jared Verse, how to go about being a professional as far as winning in the NFL. So I think this would be a Jared Verse type selection right here because I think the interior offensive linemen, they can go back to that in rounds 2 and 3.
I like it. Real quick, I do think Murphy would be a nice Wilkins replacement. Verse makes all the sense in the world. I think O-line needs help, but BP, you can speak to this. These Shanahan disciples, they have a little hubris with the O-line. Just give me a stud left tackle and 4 other dudes, and we'll make it work,
They do. You can get a tough, smart guy that can move a little bit and get out in this wide zone, although some of these teams we're seeing it with McVay, we've seen it with Shanahan. They're kind of, countering literally and figuratively with some bigger, stronger offensive line. It's not all about just wide zone because teams are doing a good job trying to stop the wide zone, so they got to come back with a little bit more power and gap elements there as well. So it's interesting. You get a smart, tough player on the offensive line, you can figure that out, especially on the interior later on in the draft. And it's not only a top-heavy draft for the offensive line, it's a deep draft for the offensive line. So we could see that with the Dolphins here. We could see it later with the Dolphins. We could see defensive line with the Dolphins. Let's go to the pick. Kyle Krabs ready to go. 21 Locked On Dolphins making the selection in the Locked On NFL Mock Draft Special.
With the 21st pick of the Locked On NFL Mock Draft, the Miami Dolphins select Jared Verse, defensive end, Florida State. The Dolphins had eyes on a couple of offensive linemen that would have addressed a more obvious need on the Dolphins depth chart. But after the board fell the way that it did, Verse was simply too good of a value at a premium position for the Dolphins to pass up. When you consider star pass rushers Jalen Phillips and Bradley Chubb are both coming off of season-ending injuries, and Miami will be in the midst of continuing to transition away from some of their bigger money veteran contract players over the next few seasons, Jared Verse as a premium position player with explosiveness and power to complement Jalen Phillips makes a lot of sense for the Dolphins as a sensible addition for Anthony Weaver's defense. The Dolphins have already invested a ton on the defensive side of the football in free agency, and they will continue that trend here with this pick as they make sure that their pass rush will not betray them as they try to chase down the top of the AFC.
Spent a little extra time on his hair, getting ready for that pick too. Looking good.
It's a strong pick and a strong hair game from Kyle Krabs, as always. For those of you listening on the audio-only version of this, you got to go check out the Do, I think, on the video side of things. We're having fun, and it's a great pick. I mean, he did stay in state. We teased it. We kind of knew it was coming. Jared Verse, Florida State edge rusher to the Miami Dolphins. And I didn't think about, Keith, you brought up the angle with Bradley Chubb, kind of similar scouting report, right? A power element to his game. I've seen Jared Verse put guys, Graham Barton, offensive tackle that's projected to maybe go in the first round. He put him on his back with that power, that bull rush move, and maybe a little tight at times, but man, you see the way he worked out at the combine, showing speed, a lot to work with and a lot to develop off the edge.
Yeah, I agree 100%, and I'm still all in on Jared Verse. I know, his draft stock has kind of fell a little bit over the past year. Well, he was in talks to be edge number 2 in last year's draft before deciding to come back. But man, listen, in edge rushers, you need somebody that's going to hold up on the edge, be able to set the edge in the run game. But it's football at the end of the day, right? And we're talking about you as an edge rusher going against 300+ pound grown men, and you need that element of power. So his speed to power conversion, I like it. I love it. I think it's a good fit, a seamless fit for the Miami Dolphins.
Absolutely. I mean, you mentioned Graham Barton, BP, and that was a name that I was like, if they wanted to go offensive line, Connor Williams, their center, I think he's hitting free agency, or he's not. They're not solidified there. They got some, and when you have a guy like Tua Tagovailoa, who's not the most athletic guy or agile, you want to make sure that you protect and create that barrier on the interior offensive line so he can step into. But getting Jared Verse, and you think about whenever Bradley Chubb returns healthy, whenever Jalen Phillips returns healthy, you got some interchangeable pieces to get after Josh Allen to get after Aaron Rodgers and whoever is going to be taking snaps under center for the New England Patriots, you have yourself a nice, robust pass rush trio.
Tony Wiggins from Locked On Jags has seen this guy up close for several years and has an inside perspective over in the Locked On NFL War Room.
Just a high energy guy, Energizer Bunny. I think he really, really fits on the as a third pass rusher. Him and Jalen Phillips, they got that same kind of energy. You know what I mean?
Yep.
And he's a little bit under 6'3", but he is going to put that hard hat on and come to work every single day. Reminds me of, what's the kid name in Cincinnati? Is it Fredrickson or Hendrickson?
Hendrickson. Yeah. Trey Hendrickson.
That's what he is. That's what he is. He's not all twitchy and long and linky like, say, a Daniil Hunter, but he is a dude that will turn that power into speed and vice versa. He's just going to be an all-day type dude. He won't do anything all day, and then all of a sudden he'll pancake somebody. He'll run somebody over and make a play in the backfield because he's going to keep trying.
New to the network, Brian Smith of Locked On Seminoles breaks down the Florida State defensive lineman from the college perspective.
What will an NFL team get with Jared Verse from Florida State University? There are 2 prime points here. Number one is versatility. Because of his power at 6'4", 260 pounds, Verse is capable of playing strong side or weak side end and holding the point of attack, even against a really talented and rather large offensive tackle at the NFL level. His athleticism will allow him to gain leverage, and if they're not careful, slip into the backfield to make a play of his own. Also, depending on the team he goes to, whatever defensive ends they have or what they would like to draft in addition to Verse, he can be the complementary piece, even if he's the better player. Meaning because he can play either side, he's going to be able to help out no matter the down, the distance, the team they're playing, etc. He will make other players better around him. Is he a first-round pick? In my eyes, I really don't see it as a debate. I've seen others talk about that, but due to his versatility and his ability to be a pure pass rusher and somebody that can stuff the run as a weak side or strong side end, Jared Verse is one of the best players in the draft, offensively or defensively. Jared Verse is a stud.
All right, we're going to finish up this episode of the mock draft special with the Philadelphia Eagles coming up at pick number 22. Louis and Gino doing great things at Locked On Eagles. What will they do here with the 22nd pick? And what were they eyeballing earlier when they were trying to trade up? I don't remember which one of you guys said it. You thought maybe Nate Wiggins could be the guy. Maybe cornerback is what they were looking for to move up for. Wiggins still on the board. Cooper DeJean still on the board. There's still some of those first round grades out there. Damian, what are you looking at here for the Eagles at pick 22?
I think corner and wide receiver. I think, Quez Watkins has tried to fill that wide receiver 3 role for them, but it just hasn't gone well. And teams know what Devonta Smith and what A.J. Brown bring, but bringing someone in that can bring some speed, like an Xavier Worthy, into that wide receiver 3 role could be a really big asset to Jalen Hurts, where you allow A.J. Brown to control him and Dallas Goedert being healthy, control the middle of the field, and now you can uncork that deep ball to Worthy and to Devonta Smith. But I still think corner, James Bradbury did not have a great year last year, and Darius Slay is getting up there in age. Yes, Keely Ringo's there, and everything. Eli Ricks is there. They still need to bring in more talent in that cornerback room. So I absolutely would look at a Nate Wiggins, Cooper DeJean, someone to take that next step for this defense.
DeJean and Wiggins are so different. I wonder what Vic Fangio would prefer. Remember, there's a new defensive coordinator now. I mean, they may be doing things a little bit differently. I agree with everything you said, Damian, but I did want to throw in one thing. If you're going to dangle premier offensive line prospects in front of Howie Roseman, he'd have a hard time turning it down.
Yeah, that's a good point. You got Xavier Worthy. I don't think we should be shocked at any point when Xavier Worthy gets plucked off the board too. 4.21 speed. I remember with John Ross a few years back. He was like, hey, he's a good player, might be a first-round guy. He goes, runs 4.22. He's like, nope, he's actually a top 10 guy now. And teams are enamored with speed. And with what they've already got in Philadelphia, you throw, that kind of speed into that offense, that could be something that is very tantalizing for the Eagles as well. But let's get to the pick. Louis DiBiase is ready to go. Locked On Eagles, pick 22 in the Locked On NFL Mock Draft Special.
With the 22nd overall pick in the 2024 Locked On NFL Mock Draft, the Philadelphia Eagles select Clemson cornerback Nate Wiggins. I know the concerns about his weight. He's in that Emmanuel Forbes territory, under 180 pounds. He is not a very good tackling prospect right now at his position, but for me, I am prioritizing the more important traits at corner: speed and coverage ability. Nate Wiggins is a 4.29 speed corner. He is long. He has great ball skills. He can play in man and zone, press man, off the line of scrimmage. This is what the Eagles desperately need in 2024 and in the future, with Darius Slay being over 30, James Bradberry coming off the worst year of his career. He's also over 30. The Eagles need a long-term solution at cornerback. They have some physical players on defense that can also hit, so that makes up for Wiggins' tackling. Plus, again, with that long frame, he is a taller cornerback. I think he can put on some weight and be coached up in the tackling department. So overall for the Eagles, I think this is an outstanding pick for a player that we almost traded up for, and he fell right into our laps at pick 22.
So it was Nate Wiggins. He was the target all along for the Eagles, even trying to get up to get him. I didn't really think it was a good point, Matt, about Vic Fangio and Damian. We've been going to you for our corner analysis. So I want your thoughts here and where Wiggins ranks for you amongst the corners. Thinking about Fangio, he might like Cooper DeJean in that physicality and the way he plays. And Nate Wiggins, no relation to our Tony Wiggins from Locked On Jaguars, by the way. Nate Wiggins is a thinner guy. He doesn't love contact like Cooper DeJean does. I wonder about the fit there, but if you're drafting a corner, it's all about that sticky coverage, and I think Wiggins is stickier than DeJean in coverage.
Absolutely, BP. And it's crazy because he's one of those guys that he will tackle when he has to. It's just the fact that sometimes he just doesn't want to. It's almost Deion Sanders like he'll throw his body in there if he absolutely has to. But when you look at the coverage ability, he can play off coverage. He can play off man, press man. But it's the recovery speed, it's the twitch, it's the explosiveness. Ask Drake Maye. He picked Drake Maye off where he baited him to a throw on the defensive left sideline, but he's playing off coverage, heavy inside leverage. But the explosiveness and closing burst to drive on that throw and still get 2 feet in, make the interception. He did it early in the season, I think week 2 or 3 for Clemson versus FAU. Same thing this time. The first time he did it, he took it for a pick 6. He has outstanding ball skills, really good hips. I saw him down at his pro day. He was actually back up towards his playing weight of like 185, so he's a little bit bigger. But just the way he moves was just so seamless, fluid, sharp cuts, can really get in and out of his breaks well. I think this is a young man that will be able to live on the outside for them. And I think if you have some concerns about Eli Ricks as an athlete, which I think most people do, when you look at Keely Ringo and then Nate Wiggins, you may have your future cornerback pair with those two athletic guys.
The Draft Dudes are back to wrap us up with a look at the final 3 picks of today's episode. Let's hear from Joe Marino and Kyle Krabs.
Taliese Fuaga to the Pittsburgh Steelers. Jared Verse, edge rusher, Florida State, to the Miami Dolphins. Nate Wiggins, a big-time answer for the Philadelphia Eagles at the cornerback position. Kyle, I really like this batch of picks. Especially you start to look at some of the needs that were filled with. I think Philadelphia needed some big-time help at that corner position. James Bradberry just not looking like he's got much left in the tank. Darius Slay still performing well, but getting older. They get a guy in Nate Wiggins that's super competitive, long, super explosive, has ball skills, gives them a nice answer for that cornerback room. And Miami Dolphins as well, getting Jared Verse, needing some impact for that defensive line, especially with some of the uncertainty with Bradley Chubb and Jalen Phillips coming back, both with some significant injuries that happened later in the season. Shaq Barrett, a great addition, needs some help there in Jared Verse in it. I know that you like to talk about exit ramps, and they have one of those with Bradley Chubb at some point. Jared Verse gives them a long-term plan there along that defensive end position.
Yeah, sources tell me that the Dolphins were heartbroken that Fuaga came off the board to Pittsburgh. So let's give a little bit of flowers to Pittsburgh and nailing down another mauler between him and Broderick Jones. They got some nasty dudes up front now that they're able to play with, and so a little bit of positional flexibility, I think, for Fuaga as well, with where he ultimately ends up landing, and that frees them up to get best combinations of 5 as they look to continue to run the football with their adjusted quarterback situation that they have. So I think that's a really sensible fit for Pittsburgh too. But yeah, I mean, just to kind of reiterate what you said about Wiggins in Philadelphia, I think the athleticism and length that he brings versus what Philadelphia has been committed to, because especially when you consider with how they've kind of managed and approached the salary cap, they don't have an exit ramp in the same way that you just mentioned. Miami has an exit ramp this offseason from the Bradley Chubb contract in 2025 with a player in Jared Verse now that's coming in on a rookie contract. If he performs at a certain level, that would be on the table. Philly hasn't really had that. They're going to have to take their lumps. So getting a player who can be cheap while you finish it out, I guess, with what they have with Bradbury and his contract and the void money that's been put off behind it, that's going to allow him to stay on the roster longer than he otherwise would. It was a very necessary pick for Philadelphia.
Episode 4 is in the books. We are rolling along in the 2024 Locked On NFL Mock Draft Special, sponsored by LinkedIn. Finishing up the first round and beyond. Next, on to the final 2 episodes. Tune in to find out who your team will pick. And don't forget to find the entire special on both audio and video at the Peacock and Williamson NFL Show, Locked On NFL Draft, and Locked On NFL podcast feeds. For Matt Williamson, Damian Parson, Keith Sanchez, I'm Brian Peacock. We'll see you for the rest of round 1 and bonus picks for every team in the draft. Every team's first pick will be accounted for on the Locked On NFL Mock Draft Special, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.